if you're not giving your body what it needs, it's never actually going to do what you want it to do. Oof. To a certain extent. And so
write that down.
Yeah, that's a gold nugget.
Good as Gold's the official Gold's Gym Australia podcast.
Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Good as Gold's podcast. We're your hosts, Cal and Em.
Hello.
And today we have a lovely little treat in the world of dietitians.
We do. We have the wonderful Gabby Ward. She is an accredited dietitian and sports dietitian, and we talk all things nutrition.
We're talking LEA, which is low energy availability.
Yep.
What is that? We're going to find out, hopefully.
Yep. We talk about the menstrual cycle and how to fuel your body during that time and around that whole cycle.
Yep. And also touching on food freedom. And why it's important. Chasing just wellness over aesthetics.
Yeah, which is something that
would you say
I think
that you
a lot
eat,
of us...
Would you say that you eat for aesthetics or wellness?
No, wellness. Yeah,
sure?
I would say...
I know.
I would say definitely for wellness, yeah. And I think it's really important, and this is what you guys are about to find out.
Yeah, let's jump into it. Proudly supported by Raw Energy, cafe partner for Gold's Gym Australia.
Gabby, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today. How are you?
Good, thank you. Thanks for having me. How are you guys?
Look, we're doing swell.
Yeah, we're doing really well.
We're doing well. High energy.
We're eager to learn. Tell the people who is Gabby Ward?
Who is Gabby Ward?
Gabby Ward, you'll find me on Instagram as Gabby Ward Sports Dietitian, so probably what people know me as. I work with a range of areas. It's not just in sport, but the main sports I work with are CrossFit, weightlifting and powerlifting, but it's really broad too. I work with people just who are being active a lot throughout the week, people who I'm working on their relationship with food. It's a broad spectrum. As for myself, my training is a little bit mixed. So I did CrossFit for a really long time, took a bit of a break. I've started reintroducing that. And most of what I've been doing is just like general strength work. And for myself, I live on the sunny coast, but I work in a clinic in Brisbane, studied on the sunny coast. But yes, that's a bit about me.
Lovely. Now, the sports nutrition compared to just nutrition.
What does that look like?
Put it together for me.
Yeah. General nutrition. So there's like the general population nutrition, which might just be, okay, well, there's the guide to healthy eating, making sure you're just getting in what you need. There's also medical nutrition therapy, which is the difference between a dietitian and other nutrition professionals, which means that we can help people that have medical conditions. And then sports nutrition is making sure we optimize someone's intake to not only match what their requirements are, but make sure that they're thriving in whatever activities that they're doing.
Yes, and I love that. And I think it's such a crucial part. Emily and myself are both trainers, we're both coaches, and we're always very much putting emphasis on the fact that you need to fuel your body so you can, move correctly. Yeah. And it's very hard to try and like push PBs or like get stronger, be better if you're not fueling your body correctly. And so on that sense, we're looking at, I guess the term is energy expenditure, right? So you're putting food in, but then you're requiring energy. That's explain to me what a calorie is in a way. Yeah,
so calories in the most basic terms are their unit of energy. So there's calories and kilojoules. We use kilojoules a lot in Australia, but most people are familiar with calories, so we'll go with that. Calories are a broad term of pretty much whatever food you eat, they give you an energy source, and then that can be broken down further into what a lot of people have heard of as well in terms of your protein, carbs, and fats.
Right, and then that would in turn fuel you to perform at a level. And so if you're just looking, like you said, just general population nutrition, that's just like, you're a male, you're 30, you're 182 centimeters, you're 90 kilos, you should be eating this because you're at a sedentary state, you should be eating this much. But if that was in case, and I am all those things, but I'm an intense CrossFitter, I should be eating differently?
Yeah, absolutely. So as you said, it matches your energy expenditure. So we need to make sure that And it also depends on your goals too. So if you're just wanting to maintain, look after your recovery, then you're just trying to match up what your expenditure is. And it's not only what you're doing in your exercise, but it's also us sitting here talking, our body regulating our temperature, sleeping, all the rest of it. Whereas then if your goals are something like you're wanting to grow muscle mass, then you need to have a little bit more there because you need to have those extra resources coming in. But yes, it's a lot of different factors. So everyone's metabolism is a little bit different, and that's what depicts how much energy and calories that you need. And then it also depends on how much you move around throughout the day, how much you fidget, how intense your sport is, how long you do that, and also what training phase you're in as well, or what your goals are. So it's pretty broad.
Yeah. And let's like kind of knuckle into, I want to talk about energy availability, and I want to specifically kind of talk about low energy availability. So run us through exactly what that kind of looks like and what that means.
So when we were talking about your energy expenditure or your energy requirements, that's making sure that you're matching those two up. Low energy availability means that you aren't getting in enough energy, so you're not getting in enough food to fuel all of the activities that you're doing. And so therefore there's a mismatch. And that doesn't always necessarily look like being in a calorie deficit. We can start to see that taking a bit more of a toll on not only your performance, but also your health and well-being in the long term. So pretty much a mismatch between what you're giving your body compared to what it needs.
Yeah, it's something that's so common, isn't it? Because like, especially in our field, like Cal and I see this a lot, like where that low energy availability is there, and you know, a lot of people I find they wonder why they can't, like they're not seeing results as well, because they're like, you know, they're eating a stupid amount, like a small amount of calories, and they're like, but why am I still, like, I've been in this deficit for however long or whatever. And it's like, where do people kind of start if they are feeling low energy, like available, like if they're starting to be really low on energy, where do they kind of start with nutrition?
When it comes to low energy, so for example, it would need to be addressed, and there can be things that can be optimized as well. And so, as you said, there's lots of people that are underfueling, or they're not really optimizing their nutrition and therefore not getting their desired outcomes. And there's a couple of different things, like at the most basic case, like a lot of people think they're eating a very small amount of calories, but what they're probably underfueling, and then it might end up in them actually subconsciously or consciously ending up overeating. So the average for the week doesn't mean that they are getting it enough, but just because you're back ending or on the weekend you're blowing out doesn't mean that your training throughout the week is going to be good. So there's that side of it, which is like not quite low energy availability. Then you get into, there's actually 3 sections of like energy availability, and there's like good, where everything's matched. And then there's amber, where you're starting to get low, and that might be people who are in a bit of a deficit. And then there's a red, where you've either been in a deficit for a really long time, or you have been having really low body fat, or underfueling yourself. A good place to start is, often there's warning signs. Our body likes to whisper before it starts to scream. So as you said, some of those symptoms of low energy availability might be, not hitting the performance that you're wanting. It might be having that actual physical low energy, not having the concentration. It's not limited to people who have low body fat either. It doesn't discriminate to males or females. And it can start off by looking like, okay, we're just not firing on all cylinders. And then if we don't address that, it can then become a further issue where, as I said, like go more into that red. It was initially thought to be mostly females. And so it started with like thinking that, okay, well, irregular menstrual cycles are a missing period. Okay, mostly just females are impacted, but it's actually a lot of males as well. It's just not quite seen in the same
there's no symptoms as such.
Yeah, absolutely. And as you said, a lot of us live lives where we're like, oh, I'm just a bit tired, or maybe I can do something else. And everyone keeps thinking, oh, how much more can I take away, or what more can I add in training-wise? In terms of trying to meet their goals, that they're just putting themselves potentially further into that low energy availability.
I've got a few friends who.
Even I've been guilty of being that uneducated person. You know,
in the
where
beginning for sure, I was like that, and I thought I was fueling my body for sure, and like even protein, like I'm such a stickler now for protein source, and not to be confused with a protein shake or powder, but like getting my protein in that I need.
Yeah.
Not only is it satiating, so it's going to make me feel fuller for longer, but like that is what my body is requiring. It's like it's begging me for protein.
Yeah. And sometimes it's hard too, because depending on, you probably experienced it, like if you train a lot, sometimes it's on your rest days that you actually feel the hungriest, or you don't actually feel like eating after or around your training.
Yeah.
And so it can be either conscious or subconscious when it comes to underfueling as well. So it could be the fact that you think, I'm not hungry, so I don't have to eat. And it is counterintuitive.
So,
but in those cases, we can't exactly eat intuitively or always just listen to our body. We need to understand and learn a bit about nutrition and how to fuel ourselves optimally, so we don't fall into that rabbit hole as well. Other ways we could subconsciously end up underfueling is we just don't have the cooking skills. Either we may not have the financial resources. There could be lots of different things. So it's not always how I did explain as well. Like, okay, we're always looking for what other food can I take out, or what other exercise can I add in. It can be those other ways that we accidentally fall by the wayside by being like, oh, I'm not actually hungry, so now 4 hours has gone past and I haven't had anything to eat after my grueling gym session.
So where does someone start when they are feeling in that, like they have low energy availability? Where does someone start to kind of like rebuild that?
So it depends on the severity of what the symptoms are as well. So what happens is that when you're underfueling, your body's pretty much going into low battery saver mode. So like, for example, on your phone, when your phone starts to run out of battery, all the apps in the background shut down to try and optimize the performance and make that battery last for as long as possible.
Makes sense.
So that's what can happen with the body. So it starts to impact our endocrine organs, and then therefore it starts to impact like your digestion or your menstrual cycle. Pardon?
I just said, wow, yeah.
And so it depends on how far into low energy availability they are, and also what their symptoms are. But first and foremost, we need to try and match the energy intake to the energy expenditure. Sometimes it can also be a case of the micronutrients or the macronutrients as well. So for example, if someone is really depleted in a lot of micronutrients, your body is sensing, okay, well, I'm not functioning optimally, I'm going to start going into protection mode. And that's when we start to see some of like your body slowing down, and we might have digestive discomfort or loss of a menstrual cycle or erectile dysfunction, like all of these random things. And again, we might tie it to something else because we might not realize we're in low energy availability. But what we need to try and do is match that energy intake in extreme cases. So often when I'm working with people who have relative energy deficiency, so low energy availability is underpinning relative energy deficiency in sport. So it just means that your body hasn't been getting enough, and so it starts to try and make you survive. Like, it's pretty much going into that survival mode. And sometimes people have to go what we call like all in, and that's in a very extreme case where it's like you need to cut out all exercise, and we need to really ramp up your calories so that your body feels safe again, and it can bring itself out of that mode. Like, it's trying to make sure that you're fully charged before it's going to bring any of those apps back up in the background.
And talking on, even like you mentioned before, macronutrients being the protein, carbs and fat, but the micronutrients is almost quite crucial and important. And I've found this firsthand from my wife, and just iron intake, for example, as well. And it's not as simple as just, eating more steak or 3 kilos of spinach to get your iron up as well. But in like conjunction with that, you need to have like zinc, because if your body doesn't have enough zinc, it won't take in the iron as well. So it's like getting those macronutrients up, or basically putting the right fuel in your body. It's not as simple as just having a Kit Kat because it fits into your macronutrients. But if you had, for example, like some pumpkin or something like that, it's got like, it's a carb, it'll fill that little bucket, but it's also got a whole bunch of other good micronutrients and macronutrients, right?
Yeah, exactly. And it's not only about even the macronutrients and the micronutrients, but like what's the digestibility, because if you said like a bar versus the same macros coming, like same macros and calories coming from, like, just as an example, like a yogurt bowl with granola, protein, peanut butter and berries that's going to digest a lot slower because compared to the bar's already been broken down, so your body doesn't have to do as much work. And then that's going to leave you feeling hungrier sooner, and you're also not going to have those micronutrients, as you mentioned, compared to something that's more nourishing but is also more of like along the lines of whole foods. But then in saying that, depending on how active the person is and relating it, then again, like circling back a little bit to how you mentioned, sometimes you're not hungry after a training session. Okay, well, maybe in that case, the bar would actually be better than the one that's like really high in those micronutrients as well. So it does depend on the scenario a little bit, but absolutely, it's definitely a mix of the quality of your food as well as the quantity. And we need to make sure that it is a nice balance. First and foremost, like it's the very basic, we always need to make sure that we're having enough energy, and then it goes into like your macros and micros, and then it goes into your timing, and then it's like water and supplements in order of like priority. And so, as you mentioned, there are some key micronutrients that are going to help with general health and well-being and that energy availability and how your body's functioning. So as you said, like iron, making sure that, yes, like things like zinc, but also vitamin C improves that bioavailability. But on the other hand, okay, well, let's make sure that it's not being had, if that's an issue for a person, that's not being had around the same time as like coffee or tea or things that contain caffeine, because they contain tannins, which compete for absorption, and unfortunately iron loses out on. Or things like your omega-3s from like your fatty fish and that sort of stuff as well.
Let's just...
Can we pause here for a second? Because I need... pull up a chair and just honestly, we need to talk about this. Caffeine when you wake up, no food in your system, is that a no-no?
Depends on the scenario. Because if...
Good to hear.
But I just wanted a yes or no question. No.
Nutrition's never that simple. And
yeah, exactly.
No, but if that's going to impact what your intake is for the next couple of hours, probably not ideal. Or if you're someone that's hypersensitive to caffeine and that's either going to give you digestive upset for a long time or pique your anxiety, that's not going to set you up well at all throughout the day. It is better to have caffeine along with food because it's just not going to have as significant of an impact on that stimulation on the body. But I wouldn't necessarily say it's good or bad. It probably depends on the person and how their body responds to that.
How much caffeine is too much caffeine?
The upper limit's around 400 milligrams a day. So that's like 3 to 4 shots of coffee or one really big pre-workout.
So the average pre-workout, like if you had 2 scoops, is like 400 milligrams of caffeine.
I used to drink 4 shots. Like I would have 2 doubles easy.
Coffees?
Yeah.
Plus an oxy?
Maybe.
Like an oxy
shred.
Oxy
shred, yeah. Like it does. Even just like on this caffeine rant, I just remember so vividly when I was kind of like, it was also probably like a mental and a mindset kind of thing as well. Just like clutching on to like caffeine as like getting me through the day, right? Because it was, my days were like quite hectic. But it's just so interesting, isn't it, that like caffeine or how much we rely on coffee to kind of like get us through the day. Okay, let's give a scenario here. If someone, because I actually know a few girls that are going to understand this scenario, but basically, like, let's say you're having 4 or 5 coffees a day just to kind of like get through the day. What would you be looking at where, like, from a food perspective, nutrition perspective, of like where to, obviously, there's some red flags there, right? What are they?
I would be looking at like what is their actual intake like? Are they using that and avoiding food? A lot of the time it's like a lot of people will think I need a bit of a pick-me-up because they're needing energy, but it's like, okay, well, do you need a pick-me-up or do you actually need energy? Because
have you just not eaten?
Yeah, so what caffeine does is it binds itself to receptor sites that just usually tell your body that you're tired, so it's blocking those. So it's telling you that you're not fatigued, whereas if you just had food, you would actually have energy. Food actually gives you energy. Caffeine doesn't give you energy. It just tells you that you're not fatigued.
We were literally just having this conversation, like literally just before we spoke to you. Our producer was like, "No, I might go get a coffee," and it was like, "Yeah, we can't have another one.
Have a banana, brother."
Yeah.
I like that too. Like mid-morning I'll be like, oh, maybe I'll go and have a coffee. I'm like, no, it's been
Hang on.
4 hours since you've eaten. Go have something to eat.
Yeah.
Yes. And it's like, that's the stuff that I think, like, let's say Gen Pop, we either know and we forget, or we don't prioritize it, or we don't know and are uneducated and are like, why do I feel so tired? Why am I so tired?
Even to think like, you know, calling an energy drink, and like, say, for example, a Red Bull that has 0 sugar, it's got ultimately 0 calories, which is zero energy, quote unquote, right? So for someone to do that, they're just perking themselves up. In a powerlifting comp, for example, though, like if I'm going in competition day, I'll fuel myself with food. I will then take caffeine tablets to perk myself up, not to give me energy per se. But I think like it's super interesting because people wouldn't know that. Like they'll be like, oh, I'll just have 3 coffee shots before I work out and I'll get through it. It's like, that's just literally blocking something in your brain to be like, buddy, you're tired, you should rest.
Yeah,
or
exactly.
eat food.
That might
right?
be exacerbating all the stress that is already on their body. Like again, if not that everything's about like energy availability, but if you're having that because you're under fueling and you're just trying to get through it, you're just accumulating the stress on your body. Your body doesn't know where that stress is coming from, whether it's like emotional or what's going on in your life or the exercise that you're doing. It just sees it as a load. So if you're pushing yourself to get through that and under fueling, which is another stress, you're just going to have a bit of a shit show at the end of it.
Absolutely.
Or it'll catch up with you.
Yeah, exactly. It'll catch up with you at some point. I want to talk about diet culture. What is your perspective on that?
I think that there's been, obviously a lot of us probably grew up with just thinking it was normal and
100%.
trying to always eat the largest amount of food for the smallest amount of calories possible, no matter what that looks like. And that probably again feeds into us thinking like, oh, this high protein chocolate bar is better for us than this other food, for example. Like just thinking that, oh, we need to deprioritize foods that have always been around for these probably over processed different types of foods. And no foods are good or bad, but I think that diet culture has definitely fallen into, it's definitely multifactorial. Like it's a mix of body image issues, people having societal norms, I suppose, trying to always be on that grind or be as small as you possibly can, no matter what that's doing to your body. It's definitely a whole mix of things. And I don't know if I'm just in my own little world, but I think that it's changing for the positive.
I do too. I agree.
I'm seeing a huge shift in even
100%.
The clients that I see, and even just locally, the people that I know. It's like that, you know, before you would like eat for aesthetics. It's like, I got to be shredded and I've got to look a certain way now. It's like, even like, man, I got so over. We would count calories like almost religiously in certain phases. And I'd be like, no, I've got to only eat this much. And I get to dinner of like, I've only got 200 calories left. I guess I'm having 2 bananas, or I could have this, or I could have this. And I'm just like weighing up my things. And then when I started intuitively eating and just being like, no, I'm just going to nourish my body, and I just track protein, it's so much better. I don't feel so like confined by this box anymore. So, and in that, like, I know what my protein, macronutrient is, so I can track that. And for people at home, how could they figure that out? If they wanted to track, say, their macros, how do they figure that out? Is it simply just punching it into a calculator? Do they go see a sports nutritionist?
To be honest, if you're just looking at what you require, there's a billion things online. And no matter what equation that you use, even if you use the most accurate equation, you'll still have to try and factor that to what your body requires as well. A really easy way, if someone's just wanting to start tracking, as an example, is just start logging what you're eating. Like just try and play around with actually entering it into any of those apps like MyFitnessPal, Easy Diet Diary, whatever, and see what your actual intake is. And then no matter what you're trying to do, you can then think, okay, well, if they're just looking at calories to start off with, because macros can be a lot in itself, it's, okay, well, am I trying to maintain what has my body weight been doing? Or am I trying to lose? Okay, I'll take a little bit off. Macros takes an extra level to it, which if anyone that's tracking, I would definitely suggest working with some sort of health professional
100%.
because that can fall into that deep rabbit hole of like the diet culture side of things and being too meticulous with foods. And then, as you said, like getting to the end of the day and having 200 calories and trying to eat for aesthetics rather than like performance and wellness, whereas it probably most of the time ends up having the opposite effect, because most people get so caught up in the numbers, they're actually not optimizing their nutrition, because we're not robots. We don't have to eat the same thing every day, and so your body is fighting back and you're constantly fighting against that because you're not actually fueling well. And so that's when it's important to make sure you're working with a health professional to be like, well, everyone can figure out the calories and macros, but being able to navigate that outside of numbers, because we're not robots and we do need to change a little bit day to day, and also have that flexibility and that good relationship with food to be able to go, okay, well, this might not fit in my macros, but this has happened today, or you know what, for whatever social reason, it's actually going to be healthier for me to go out and do this with my friends than stay home or take out my pre-cooked meal option.
Literally. It's like, and I'm sure we've all been there, right, where we've like brought our Tupperware container of chicken and rice and broccoli, and you know, we've met up with our friends, eating exactly the sacrifices we made, and looking back now, I'm like, oh gosh, like I don't ever see myself grabbing that ever again.
No. How it's like that diet culture, and you're like, I'm so disciplined. Everyone else is unhealthy.
Literally, I know you have this like superiority. You're just like, I'm so much better than everyone. But like, little do we know, it's like probably not ideal, especially psychologically. Do you find you work with a lot of people who do kind of associate like that mindset component with nutrition, where, you know, psychologically they've been damaged through diet culture, or like what is your kind of like take on that?
Absolutely. And I think it's so generational, because most of us, we've probably seen our parents dieting, or we were on social media platforms and you've seen like the classic, like, nothing tastes as good as skinny feels. Like we were like, pretty much from the age of technology, we've been exposed to our like different types of body image, and then always being sold something along with that, like a different type of diet. And I think intrinsically we definitely have been, and a lot of people do come in with a lot of like moral value around their food and trying to eat as clean as possible and that sort of stuff. And it's like, well, is that mindset actually serving you, and is that actually helping you to achieve what you want to achieve? And if someone's sitting in my office, it probably hasn't. And I find that that's probably most people.
What about women and nutrition in the way that their physiology changes, you know, throughout their cycle and eating habits? I see like we deal with women in our training, and just like it's the classic. I hear it every time. It's like, I'm bloating, I'm on my period, I've put on 3 kilos, most of which is probably water weight, and I just want chocolate. Unpackage that.
In the most simplest form, without getting too hectic into the menstrual cycle. So our body does change across our menstrual cycle. So when you first get your period, your hormones are the lowest. We're most like males, we will actually feel pretty much our best for most people. As you start to approach ovulation, around ovulation is when we're pretty much the best. Often you'll hit your PBs, or you'll feel your best in your training. From when you've ovulated, so that's like around halfway through that menstrual cycle, through until when you get your period. So your progesterone, one of your hormones, is starting to increase, your luteinizing hormones being released and increasing. And on the second half of your cycle, you will start to notice, okay, well, maybe my body, I don't have as much energy, or my digestion is changing a little bit, or especially in that last week before you are getting your period, your weight might be up, but that's, for example, relating it back to that progesterone. So progesterone is a hormone that is increasing in that second half of your menstrual cycle, and that attaches itself to like a part of your renal system that regulates your water, and so that can increase your water retention. Because there's those changes in your hormones, there is actually an increase in your metabolic rate as well. And so we do get hungrier, we are using more energy, and studies show that it might be anywhere between 100 up to 300 calories extra. And sometimes we're not adding that in because we might be too strict on our diet, or we might be counting calories, and that doesn't align with our calories or our macros or whatever the scenario is. And then we might actually end up overeating. Whereas if you honored that, figured out what a good level for you to add in across that menstrual cycle is, then that might actually be more beneficial, and avoid feeling like you've overeaten or binges and that sort of stuff. And another thing to mention is with those changes in the second half of your menstrual cycle, it's also seen that we aren't as efficient at using carbohydrates as energy. So carbohydrates are that macronutrient. It's our main energy source as soon as any intensity starts to increase in our exercise. So our body as a female doesn't quite use that as well. And so sometimes we do need a little bit more in order to get the performance benefits. There's no strict guidelines because for a long time, women weren't studied because we were anomalies. We were too hard to study. And me compared to you, our physiology is probably actually different. So there's no research at the moment to be able to suggest like at this part of your menstrual cycle, you have to do this and this and that. It's like interpreting whatever your symptoms are. And then we do have research to be able to support interpreting those symptoms and then what to do. But it's just a little bit of a hard space on a population level. So if you're ever being sold like, here's your guide to what you should exactly do around your menstrual cycle, don't find.
It's a scam.
It's a scam.
I think, and I just think that's so important to know, especially, I know a lot about the menstrual cycle, but it's just important for women to actually understand that the reasons why we do certain things and to know about our hormones, because like, don't you agree? We actually just don't, I guess growing up, I don't know about you, Gab, but like growing up as a woman, I guess I genuinely had no idea about a period. Like all I knew is that we bled, right? Every month. And like that was just it. So it's like, it's actually so cool to hear it. And I've spoken a lot of my clients, like when I explain certain things going on in their cycle, they're just like, what? Why do I not know this? Like I'm a 20-something-year-old woman or a 30-something-year-old. Like even after babies, I think
I know more about the period than some women.
Totally. I would say the exact same. It's like, it's so cool to hear you say that. So I love it.
And growing up, we didn't know anything. It's like, you get a bleed. Oh, you better not look at a boy, otherwise you get pregnant. Like you just have literally no idea about how your hormones work, how your body works. And it's like, I didn't even learn that much about it at university. I learned about what changes happen across a menstrual cycle, but it's very textbook, like 28 days. But actually, that's textbook, but someone might be a little bit longer. Some people might be a little bit shorter, knowing what actually our body is experiencing along that time as well. And then, as you said, like being able to interpret how we feel. And sometimes it's important for some people, as you said, to learn about it. Like you don't have to grab out a textbook or do anything too hectic. You can just start using an app and tracking your symptoms.
Totally.
And while sometimes it may not necessarily even change anything, you might just give yourself that consideration to feel a lot better about yourself as to why is my weight going up, or why do I feel bloated, or why do I feel like shit in this session? Okay, well, I've actually realized that this happens pretty much around this exact day each menstrual cycle. And it can also be a little bit of a report card as well, as you said, like with us not really understanding our menstrual cycle, what does it even mean if we do start to see some changes, and what like that could be changes in symptoms, like all of a sudden it's heavier, or I have a lot more pain, or the duration is a little bit different, right through until like, I'm not actually getting a period. And whatever's happening, being able to track those changes or noticing those changes can be like a little report card as to how our health's going, because as I said, like our body can change in order to try and actually protect itself.
I love that. And that's I find that happens, and sometimes it's not happening, it's not changing in the right way as well. The importance of proteins and let's say fat in, I'm just going to say women. I'm only saying that because that's what we both deal with a lot, is like, you know, are they getting enough protein in, and why fats are important? I know it depends on the fad, but for a while they were avoiding fats. High fat foods were like, that's bad.
Oh, fat makes you put on fat, right? That was the common myth.
You can explain the need for fat in our diet, if you will, and also protein and why it's important for women to get enough protein, and maybe how you could start putting protein into your diet. Yeah,
with fat. So fat, ideally, we're getting the most of it from plant-based sources like avocado, nuts and seeds, extra virgin olive oil, and as well as marine. So like your oily fish like salmon, mackerel, tuna, those sorts of things. It's still okay if it does come in little bits in like our meat and dairy and that sort of stuff, but we want it mostly to be coming from our plant and marine-based sources, because there is different forms of fat. And the fats that are mostly from your plants and marine-based sources have anti-inflammatory properties, cardioprotective. They're really beneficial for your hormone production and regulation. So that's also a main reason, not only for females, but also males. Males still have hormones that we're trying to get that in. And then if it also comes to being in touch with your hunger and fullness signals and being able to interpret how you're feeling, fat slows down how fast your food's moving through that gastrointestinal tract. It makes you feel fuller for longer. So it is important to get these in regularly. And as I said, it doesn't mean that we need to be really restrictive and have only plant and marine-based fats, because it's just not going to happen. There will be animal-based fats, but thinking, okay, well, how can I get the majority of those in for the anti-inflammatory benefits, the hormonal benefits, and it also helps absorb our fat-soluble vitamins as well. With our protein, so I feel like everyone's either one or the other. Like, people don't get in enough, or we're hyperfixated. So sometimes we have so much of a focus on protein that it displaces other nutrients like our fat or our carbohydrates, we're not really getting enough in the right distribution. So first and foremost, like, we want to make sure that we get in a total amount of protein that's enough. And so for context, protein can be, all of your animal-based sources like chicken and turkey and beef, eggs, different types of dairy, fish, can be like protein powders, yogurt, that sort of stuff. And so, as I said, we're trying to get a total amount for the day, and that is a range depending on your activity levels. Someone who's sedentary, it might be a little bit lower. A good range for people who are active is between around 1.8 to 2.2 grams per kilogram of body weight. So you could always go down the middle of that and go, okay, well, 2 grams per kilogram of body weight for a 70 kilo person might be 140 grams total for the day. And so that's first and foremost. And what that could also look like, or what we also need to focus on, is how that's being distributed throughout the day. So we try and make sure you get at least 3 to 6 serves of good quality protein throughout the day. So all those different ones that I've mentioned. Also, I didn't mention, but plant-based sources like legumes, tofu, seitan, all different types of soy, all that sort of stuff. And as I said, like 3 to 6 serves. So that could be as simple as brekkie, lunch and dinner. What we often see is that people are back-ending it. Like, you won't really have much at brekkie. There won't really be much in snacks. There might be a little in lunch. And then we have a heap to end the day because, like, we learn, like, oh, we have a big steak, or we have bolognese, or we have like a chicken stir fry or something for dinner, and we're actually missing out on having it regularly. A good reason for trying to get it regularly is it's not only going to keep us full and be satiating, but what a good serve of protein. So ideally, let's say like 20 to 40 grams of protein. So that might be like 100, 150 grams of chicken for context. So what that does is it has little amino acids. Pardon?
I was like, even a can of tuna, that's one serving of protein, right?
Yeah, and for example, in that context, so like a can of tuna might have around 16 grams, so we might want a little bit more. Like, if it's the main meal, if it's a snack, 1 tin might be good, because snacks can be a little bit smaller, but so that might be 2 tins of tuna, a tin of tuna, and a little bit of cheese or something like that. And what we're trying to do is stimulate something that we call muscle protein synthesis. So our body is always balancing out between the protein that we're consuming and the protein that we're using, and that's not only the recovery from our muscles, but it's also for like your hair, skin and nails and immunity and those sorts of things. And pretty much we eat a little bit and it stimulates our muscle protein synthesis, and then as our body digests it, it starts to come down. We want to stimulate that again before it becomes unstimulated. So that's why we try and eat at least 3 times a day, or ideally and it doesn't have to be strict, but anywhere between every 2 to 5-ish hours, and not having big gaps between not having any.
I love that you just like, didn't just speak about, like, because what I feel is happening in society at the moment, or again, I do believe there's a massive shift happening. However, there is still that aesthetic side of eating and fueling your body. I want to talk on like you just said about your hair, skin and nails and that sort of stuff. It's like actually fueling your body for literally the inside glow that will then in turn kind of
wellness.
It literally wellness. And like, how do you go with or if you could give any piece of advice for someone who really needs to hear that, their nutrition should be for wellness rather than that aesthetic first, what would you say to them?
If you're not giving your body what it needs, it's never actually going to do what you want it to do to a certain extent. And so
write that down.
Yeah, that's a gold nugget.
And so you'll probably see like a lot of people will always be driving for these aesthetic goals, but for most people, unless they like WBFF pros, most people can't do it because your body starts to scream at you, and it changes our behaviors, and it changes the way we think about ourselves and our food. And so our body starts to work against us, not only with our metabolism, but also our mind, how much we move. As an example, if you're not functioning or giving your body enough to function, why would it in return be thriving?
Yeah.
And I guess an example would be like a lot in clinic, we see like a lot of people coming in and they're eating as little as possible. And as you said, like not seeing the performance benefits, and they'll still be wanting to lean down. They'll say, it's actually going to look like I'm feeding you a lot more food. And they get a little bit overwhelmed. But when they see not only the amount of food, but the timing around what they're doing throughout the day, they'll come in and they're like, not that everything's about body composition, but they're like, I'm actually having favorable body composition goals, and above everything else, I'm feeling better. People are saying that I'm glowing, or my hair's growing again, like all these different things. It's like, well, if you're consistently nourishing your body rather than going through deprivation cycles and then overeating cycles, your body's going to be thanking you for it.
Bye-bye, low energy availability.
Literally. And do you know what? There's just going to be so many people, men and women, that are going to be having some light bulb moments in this episode.
I think so, yeah.
Honestly, there's going to be so many of them. And I just think cool to talk about as well, because, again, I do believe it's shifting, but it's actually really cool.
Yeah.
To get that out there.
The relationship with food is so important, I think. Even if you're not an athlete or working out regularly, just like your general norm, especially like in the family as well. Like I know growing up, it was just like I would have like the wildest lunches. Like I'm talking, like cheese and bacon rolls from Woolworths.
Oh man, everyone had those.
Yeah, wait. With corned beef and like fucking olives on it, and just cheese slices. Like it sounds like
whatever you saw, you were like,
I was
that'll be
eating
good.
it. And then when I started going to the gym, I was turned 18. I was still eating that because like I was watching these dudes on YouTube who were jacked, and they were eating like 5,000 calories worth of stuff. Little did I know they were up there, hoofter on peptides and anabolic steroids, but they also had the availability. They could eat 5,000 calories. Uncle Cal couldn't eat that many calories because my energy wasn't burning out. But now I'm looking at like I'm chasing, health.
Exactly, and I think that's where the society is going. I truly do, like that part where they're just literally chasing. They want to feel so good because, there's been times where when you're in a deficit or when you're probably not treating your body the right way, you can't show up.
I've lost libido once on a full, like I cut. I was down on like 40 grams of fats or something, and like no carbs, and just I had no sex drive at all.
No, I've so been there,
and I was like, I'm not even interested in anything.
Yeah.
It's so bad. Brain fog. It was so bad, but I was like trying to get as lean as I could.
Yeah, and you see all these people, and you said like you look up to them. You're like, I want to look like them. Let alone. You don't know that they haven't had sex in how long because they're not even interested in it. They might not even have a good relationship because maybe their mental health's going out the window. Like I've talked about like your menstrual cycle changing or being tired or seeing that performance or decreased recovery or increase in like injuries. So they're quite common things to see when you underfuel. But then on the flip side, as you said, low libido, and that could be at like multiple different levels of the spectrum. Like it might be like, oh, you're not really interested right through until like you're not waking up with morning erections anymore, all of it, like a range of different things. And while that's not really a topic that you overly have with your medical professional, maybe that's something that we do need to talk about a little bit more so people can then advocate for themselves as well.
There are those sort of like, they're like almost like little red flags. They're like little warning signs.
Well, I think it's just what people what people don't know or they're
and it
just
led to binging. That was the other thing. I would binge. I would eat. I knew how many calories were in a pack of Tim Tams, like a whole pack. There was 11 Tim Tams in a pack, and it was 2,300 and something calories because I would binge an entire thing, and I would track it and just be like, all right, so I got to balance it out for the rest of the week. It's so bad though.
Really undercut yourself.
Yeah.
And then on the flip side, like some people that like, obviously in the days to come after that, you would not feel very good.
Oh my gosh, I woke up feeling like arse and my face was bloated. And I was thirsty. Give me some water. But I think it's just such a wild topic that it's so simple. Like the food, there is like an unlimited source of food out there, good, high quality, yet
Yeah.
we continue to just live this lifestyle where it's like, it's almost like I don't want to say it's like showing off, but it's like, you know, like I'm eating this and I look like this, you know, like that trend that's like, you know, it's like I can eat this and I still look summer shredded 30, you know, it's, what does that look on the inside?
And like
though?
it does come down to genetics, a lot of it too. Like some people, because the way our body communicates with ourselves, like our hormones are little chemical messengers, and so I might perceive a different level that I've normalized of like my hunger versus fullness signals compared to someone who might be in a smaller, leaner body, and they might perceive it differently. So my body would be stressed if I looked like them, whereas they find it really easy to look like that. So why am I going to compare myself to them?
Exactly.
Or our metabolism or composition might naturally be a little bit different. So it's so hard. And as you said, you probably end up looking like that if you were struggling with what to eat or your relationship with food and be like, what am I doing wrong? And it's like, it's not about you. You're not doing the wrong thing. We're just constantly bombarded with all these people who can show off that because that's what people are trying to look like, whereas you're not seeing all the people not being able to do that.
Yeah, it is interesting because like I actually remember my sister and I, for, you know, however long Victoria's Secret runway show was on TV, was like, that was our ultimate, literally my ultimate goal. And it's so funny looking because I'm 5'3", literally at best. So it's like
on a good day.
I'm on with some high heels on, probably. No, I'm 5'3", right? These models are, you know, 6 foot, and it's like, I thought
models are, they're
supermodels, yeah. But like they, you know, it's like I just remember that kind of culture, and I just remember having a routine and a diet, and you know, I'd write down I have 12 almonds because like Girlfriend Mag interviewed one of the models, and you know, it was like they ate chicken, they ate this, and it was like, all right, fuck, well if I do that, then I'll get that body, but. Little do we know, or now we know, but little did I know, okay, that's just never going to happen, genetics and all of the other things, like with that. I want to touch on like food freedom and actually what food freedom looks like, because I feel like a lot of people, we hear the word, but a lot of people don't actually understand. So what does food freedom look like?
Food freedom is the willingness to be able to eat the different types of foods you like without necessarily feeling an overwhelm of guilt, or also on a different perspective, maybe like not feeling a superiority because of your food choices as well. So not holding any moral value to the different types of food you eat, or the way of eating, or the title of way of eating you've given yourself.
That's a really good, accurate description of that. And how do we practice food freedom? Like, how does someone kind of practice that?
I guess it's a balance between making sure that we, for the most part, are nourishing ourselves regularly. So it gives us a fighting chance of being able to accurately interpret like our hunger and fullness signals. And then also being able to know like, okay, well, I can have these different foods if I'm wanting them, and having them because you enjoy them, not having a whole packet of Tim Tams because we've deprived ourselves. Okay, well, maybe I can have 2 and enjoy it, or not really giving yourself a limit and saying, okay, I can only have 2, but okay, I'll have some until I'm satisfied. And often, like I'll say to someone as an example, okay, well, make sure that you keep the foods that you like in your house, and they're instantly like, no, I'll overeat them all. And I'm like, well, keep on overeating it until you don't anymore, because once you give yourself your like permission to have it, you're taking the power away from what that food's giving you, and therefore you're free from the power that the food's having over you.
Wow, you will not have hold over me, Tim Tams.
Not today.
Not today. So, oh my God. So if you could tell maybe like a younger woman or man any piece of advice, what would you tell them?
That's definitely a hard one.
It is a hard one.
But probably don't try and do things based on trying to look like other people. Because I feel like probably when you're growing up, you're trying to find yourself in so many different ways that it's okay to have role models, but you just have to acknowledge that even if you eat and exercise the exact same as someone else doesn't mean you're going to look like them. And often what we're exposed to is one little snapshot of what's actually going on, and so you can never actually marry the two up.
That's great. Talking a little bit on, because you're in sports nutrition, supplementation. What are some supplements that I mean, would you recommend any supplements for sure that people could be taking, that people should be taking on the regular? What are some of those?
Vitamins and mineral wise, it like most of the time we need to just try and match that with bloods, because sometimes I see people come in and they'll like bring a whole bag and they're like, what should I take and what shouldn't I take? And they end up actually only needing a few things.
Yeah.
I feel like, as you said, like relating back to hair, skin and nails, like, oh, I'm feeling a little dull, I'll take that. And it's like, well, are we addressing the issue? You're trying to mask it a little bit. And then it can also be like, and then relation to actual performance enhancing supplements, it really depends on the sport, but like general like strength training, or like if you're trying to look at your performance, like even in a class, then something along the lines of like a creatine monohydrate could be great. So what creatine monohydrate does is it increases the creatine phosphate in the fluid around the muscles, and it donates a creatine phosphate to that energy system, which is our quickest firing energy system. So like quick bursts of energy. So that might allow you to be really good in a sprint or a lift, or you might be able to get that extra rep out at a heavier weight. So it can be quite universal. Protein powders can help just to be able to, again, meet that total. It's not like you need to walk out of the gym with a protein shake in hand to stimulate your muscle protein synthesis. If you're about to go home and have
anabolic
a snack,
window.
If you're about to go home and have a snack or a meal, it's going to be doing the exact same thing. But it can definitely be used to bridge that gap and make sure that, okay, well, our total's being met, but our distribution throughout the day is also. Some other things like, for example, and this is always contextual as to what they're trying to aim towards, but like something like beta-alanine. So beta-alanine pretty much allows your body to clear out the waste that's generated from when you're like, when you're working out and your muscles are contracting. So when your muscles are contracting, it's building up that waste. And so it just allows it to clear out, so you're not getting like that burn.
Like
for
lactic
example,
acid?
So again, able to push hard for longer. Yeah, exactly. Like it's an acid buffer. So it doesn't, exactly what you said. There's a few others, but they're really the main ones. And again, like it does depend on the sport, or also what their goals are. And like going back to that hierarchy in terms of most important to least important, it's like making sure that your energy budget is matching what your energy goals are. So whether that is maintenance and optimization, muscle growth or deficit, whatever it is. And then your macros, again, like your totals and your micros, how that's distributed throughout the day, hydration, and then supplements are like not even the icing on the cake. They're like the sprinkles on the icing on the cake. Like everything else is going to make the biggest difference before even touching.
Yeah, it's like don't even look at supplements.
I love that. They are literally
too.
the sprinkle, because and I've only kind of just come through to this in maybe the last 3 to 4 years, where it's the supplement you're only taking to supplement from the shit that you're not getting. Like you're literally taking protein powder, not to make you bigger, but because you're not getting enough in your food intake. You're literally taking all this. Obviously, like the stuff you mentioned, creatine, to get that ATP energy, but also beta-alanine to clear out that's stuff you can't really get in food necessarily in like a high demand. But that's so good, because like even people are like, you should be taking fish oil. I'm like, oh, Sally, you could be eating enough fish, like just, or like you're talking about the avocado oils and stuff like that. What's one thing that you would, want the world to know, just straight up for 30 seconds, that everyone is listening in the world, just throw some knowledge at them?
Oh, that's a hard one.
That is such a hard one, Callum.
Do it to me at the end of this, and I'll give you something.
Okay, so what everyone needs to do is find or understand where that maintenance is, because you can always bridge off of there. When you find a comfortable spot where you're fueling your body accurately, you're nourishing and optimizing your fueling, your health, everything else, your micronutrients, your macronutrients, you'll find that spot where you might not feel the pressure to be trying to lean down or actively gain muscle mass. Or even if you want to do those, you understand where the starting point is and then being able to branch off of it. But I feel like so many people don't really understand where that maintenance is and what that feels like to be optimized. So we're always swinging from one end of the pendulum to the other with a lot of our goals throughout life.
Yeah, true.
There's been so many gold nuggets, and honestly, like even as a coach, I'm like taking away so much from this, just even to bring into my own world, but like also my clients. So
yeah, I'll
honestly,
be implementing some of those things for
100%. Sure. Well, before we go, Gab, normally we play a little game. It's just a fast five fire questions that just come springing at you. My first question to you is chocolate or ice cream?
Chocolate.
Good
Well,
choice.
if you could only eat one food for the rest of your life, what would it be?
Chocolate.
I love that. Who is your hero?
Oh, I don't know if I necessarily have a hero, but I think Tia Claire Toomey is a bit of a badass.
Oh, she is
We love her.
definitely a badass.
Yeah, we love her.
She a baddie. Your pep up song.
Oh, good one.
Oh no.
Take your time.
Rapid fire questions. It's so rapid. Pretty much, it sounds weird, but anything from probably like Cardi B or something. Just
Yeah.
because it's a little bit
Oh, yeah.
filthy sometimes.
Literally.
Yeah.
I've got a bad bitch energy playlist.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like literally Cardi B, Nicki Minaj, you know,
Yeah.
all the things.
I end up twerking every time.
It's so good. Maybe we'll do this
Just
after.
brings it up.
Yeah, exactly. If you could meet anyone, dead or alive, who would it be? That's a hard one too, isn't it?
That's a really hard one.
I think I would go. I really would like to meet Michelle Obama or Barack Obama.
Oh yeah.
But if they could come as a duo, that would be good because I could use only one.
It's just say the Obamas.
And then I would be Justin Bieber second.
Oh yes, of
That.
course.
Oh no.
Or even Princess Di. Princess Di
Yeah,
was also in
yeah,
mine.
fair.
Yeah. I think there's lots of different people for different reasons.
Yeah.
Only because like in my mind, I'm thinking of like women's health and fueling.
Oh, yep.
There's someone called Dr. Stacey Sims.
Yep.
She is still alive. She is a researcher who's doing a lot of the research and paving the way for a lot of research in women around nutrition. She's like, I think she's based in New Zealand or something. I've done one of her courses. I just think it should be a wealth of knowledge.
Yeah.
To be able to catch up with.
I love it. Well, look, can we make that happen?
Yeah, let's make that happen. I want in on that.
Can you do that, guys?
Yeah, make it work.
Where can we find you, Gabby? Where can the people come in and pick up all the knowledge that you've been sharing with us?
Yeah, a good place to start is Instagram. So my Instagram is Gabby Ward _sports dietitian. So it's GABBYWARD_SPORTSDIETITIAN. That's a long one.
Jeez, that is long.
The company I work for is called the Sports Dietitian Co. So quite a good little marketing ploy. If you type in sports dietitian, we're going to come up.
Yeah.
I also work with and for Taylor Wales Ryan. So she is the _sports dietitian. So a lot of our posts are like collab posts and that sort of stuff. So Instagram's a good place to start. You can always then get like my email or anything like, or my number from there. But yeah, that's a good place to start.
Awesome.
Amazing.
And what's next for you in the next what's your next training regime look like? You going back into CrossFit or?
Yeah, I've been doing a lifting program. So it changes focus. So when I stopped doing CrossFit, I didn't want to lose my Ollie lifting.
Yep.
But I just wanted to get strong. So I was doing a program that incorporates both powerlifting and Olympic weightlifting. But each like 12 weeks, it switches the focus as to which one. Like at the moment, I'm more focusing on the Ollie lifting. And then once that's done, it'll go back to the powerlifting.
Yeah, nice.
And because I work in Brisbane but train on the sunny coast, I just go to a regular gym. So that's easier to be able to fit that around. And then on the days that I can, like maybe I'll go on really early or I get away from work early or whatever. I have been starting going into CrossFit again.
Yeah,
I just go to one in Maroochydore. But it's been so good just because you feel really strong, but when you're walking upstairs, you're like, I'm getting a little bit puffed. You're like, yeah, I need to fix that.
Yeah.
Oh,
well, thanks so much.
Treat.
Yeah.
This has just been fabulous. Thank you so much for joining us. And we can't wait to take some of those little gold nuggets and implement them into our lives.
Yes. Thank you so much, Gabby. I hope you have a lovely Friday afternoon. And
Thank you. Enjoy your weekend.
Thank you. We will. All right. See you later.
Catch ya.
Wowzers. Episode. Fire.
I've literally filled a notepad. I'm going to take so many of those points away.
Must be imaginary because I did not see you writing anything down.
In my head.
Yeah, no, I think just so many people will be able to benefit from.
I loved her, the way that she explained, like, you know, that low energy availability, but in the pendulum, that instead of people finding their maintenance, they either eat in surplus or they're eating in a deficit and they never find that midpoint when that midpoint's probably their best bet.
Exactly.
And they're just like, I just need to get shredded and lean and eat less when so many people undereat.
Exactly. And I think even that part of like eating for wellness, you know, rather than the aesthetic, it's like nearly, you know, you start eating for wellness, you start eating to fuel your body, to train harder, to have your, you know, your brain actually working properly without fatigue.
Yeah.
Exactly. And the other stuff kind of comes, right?
Totally. And I feel as though people are too scared to do that though, because they see it happen, and like you've got this influencer of some sort saying like you should do this diet, and they do that diet. It might work in the short term, but the long term is what you're looking at. You're looking at longevity.
That's it.
Well, I know I'm going to go and have a nice nutrient dense meal.
Yes.
I'm feeling a steak. Picture this. Steak. A nice little crisp garden salad.
Little
and just some
potatoes or
sweet
something?
potatoes. Sweet potato fries, or even some potatoes. Maybe at the counter at the sports bar counter.
Ooh.
Talk to George.
If you guys did like this episode, please rate, review, subscribe, all of the fabulous things. It helps
Share
us.
it around.
It helps us so much. Thank you so much for listening, and enjoy your day.
Appreciate you.
Good as gold. Gooder as golder.